You're watching the Business English webinar series brought to you by Human English. You can find podcasts and videos of these lectures online at humanenglish.com.
Today's session is going to be about meeting procedures. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Monica. I am American and I come from Philadelphia, which is a city located in the northeast of the United States. It's about 90 miles from New York. Currently, I'm living in Milan, Italy, and I'm working as an English teacher. Okay, some of you, I see, were with us last time in the other webinar, and some of you are new attendees. So I'd like to welcome everybody, and if you could just write in the chat box where you're coming from. I see that there are some new attendees, so can you just write down where you're coming from? Okay, yes, welcome Anna. I see you're from Ukraine, Paris from Norway. We have Gunther from Germany. He was here with us last week. Okay. And we have Rachel from Israel, Olga from Russia. Okay, we have Sergey and Oksana from the Ukraine. Okay, so we have many attendees from all different parts of the world. So I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Okay, first of all, I'd like to remind you that if you need to ask any questions, we're going to first of all start off by reviewing our webinar from last week, and this is a continuation. So first of all, we're going to talk about meetings. What is a meeting? And this is the definition of a meeting. It's an occasion when people come together intentionally or not intentionally. For example, we're having a meeting on Thursday to discuss the problem. Okay? Okay, let's look at some language review. Okay, we have to hold a meeting. So to hold a meeting is to organize or to arrange a meeting. Matters arising. Matters are the issues or the points that occur during a meeting. We have emergency, which is something urgent. Monthly, which is every month. And then we have the word chair. So I'd like anyone to write in the chat box if they know what it means, chair related to a meeting. Okay, this is something that we did last time. But does anyone remember what does it mean, chair, to chair a meeting? You can just write that answer in the chat box. Right, that's very good, Olga, to lead the meeting. Okay, so to chair a meeting is to lead a meeting, and it's usually done by the chairman or the chairperson. Okay? Right, you can also say it's to be the head of the meeting, the chairperson. Okay? It's also very important to set an agenda. An agenda is the written list of points to be discussed. The participant are the people who come to the meeting. An item is the points or issues on the agenda. And to reach a consensus is to reach a decision in the meeting. Okay, sometimes we hold an emergency meeting if it's something urgent. Often at work you can have monthly meetings to update about all the new information happening in that month. And then here we see to chair a meeting. Okay? A meeting does three things: delivers information, gathers information, and it can be used for brainstorming. And if you remember from last time, brainstorming is a problem-solving method in which all members come together to contribute ideas. Okay. Okay, so this is some review from last week, and now we're going to take a look at a summary of what today's webinar is going to be about. In today's webinar, we're going to be looking at chairing a meeting, useful phrases used in meetings, following the agenda, the follow-up after your meeting, reporting the content, which is the minutes, Okay, the minutes is the written record of the meeting. And then we'll look at some grammar of reporting. Okay, so let's look at some vocabulary relating to chairing a meeting. The first one is facilitate. Okay, can anyone write in the chat box what they think facilitate may mean? Facilitate. This is a new vocabulary word. And just write in the box if you know what facilitate means. Okay, well, this word is probably a new word for many of you, and it's an important word for a meeting. And facilitate is the same as to chair a meeting. So it means to assist, to promote, to ensure that the meeting is going ahead correctly. Okay, so a facilitator is the chairperson, the person who ensures that the meeting is going ahead, leads the meeting. Okay, so we can just use it in the same way as to chair a meeting, to facilitate a meeting. Okay, we also have open a meeting, apologies. Okay, sometimes you have to send apologies to people because you cannot attend the meeting. Establish authority. The chairperson needs to establish authority because he or she is the most important person in the meeting. Okay, here we can see different words to refer to the chairperson. We can say chair, chairman, or chairperson. Okay, all of them are correct. You need to follow the agenda, which is the written structure. Ensure that there is a clear purpose to the meeting, and get down to business. Get down to business means to start the meeting. Okay, and finally, it's important to go through the points or the items of the meeting. Okay, I'm going to read now a part of a meeting. I'd like you to just listen, and then after you'll write in the chat box which part of the meeting do you think it is. Okay, so just listen, and then you will write in the chat box which part of the meeting do you think it is. Okay, right then. I think we should get started. Can you listen, please? All right. As you all know, we're here to reach a decision on the main issues from the last departmental meeting. As you can see, there are 3 items on the agenda, and we have the room until 4:30. So let's try and stick to the agenda. Brian, could you start by outlining the areas finance have suggested we look at for cutting to achieve the 15% we agreed needs to be implemented? Okay, so which part of the meeting do you think it is? Okay, that's good. Perry and Olga said it is the opening. Right. Yes. And Rachel also the opening of a meeting. Okay, so here you can see the opening of the meeting. This is the beginning. So just take a minute to just read over the beginning of this meeting. Okay, so this is the beginning of the meeting. You can see that they introduce the agenda and they also indicate a time. Okay, now here we see a picture, and this is in an informal meeting. Sometimes we can also have informal meetings. Okay, and in informal meetings we can discuss issues with colleagues over coffee, maybe in a bar or in a coffee shop. Okay, so you will see now some expressions that the chairperson or facilitator says in a meeting. Okay, and finally, Well, as you know, we're here today too. We'll come back to that at a later date. Come up with solutions, okay? To come up with means to invent, to create. Okay, everyone, let's get started. Did everyone receive a copy of the agenda? Send apologies. There are 3 items to discuss. I'd like to hand over to. Hand over to means to give someone else the floor, to allow someone else to speak. And as you can see. Okay, here are the expressions that we can use by a chairperson in a meeting. Okay, so you are going to listen now to another beginning part of a meeting. And as you listen, try to listen for these expressions and put them in the order that you hear them. So try to listen to these expressions and put them in the order that you hear them. Okay? Okay, everyone, let's get started. Sylvie sends her apologies. She's tied up with the American visitors working on the new branding project. She'll join us a bit later. Well, as you know, we're here today to look into ways of streamlining operations as a result of recent negative feedback and to come up with cost-cutting solutions. Did everybody receive a copy of the agenda? Well, as you can see, there are 3 items to discuss. The recent operational problems that we've been having, the various outsourcing options that are on offer, and finally the cost-cutting solutions that head office have sent to us. Would anyone like to add anything to the agenda? I'm sorry, Mike, but I don't think that really comes under the scope of today's meeting. We'll come back to that at a later date, if you don't mind. Okay, at this point, I'd like to hand over to Emmanuel, who's going to kick off with a review of the recent operational issues that clients have complained about and solution that he's come up with. Emmanuel? Okay, so that was the beginning of a presentation. As you listened, you heard these expressions. So does anybody have the correct order? What was the first expression that you heard? Okay, if you can just write that in the chat box if you remember the first expression or the list of expressions that you heard. Okay, right, Anna, it's 5. So the first one was, okay, everyone, let's get started. Okay. Right, Gunther, okay. So that's the first part, let's get started. Okay, after that? Okay, after that we have send apologies. Okay, and then we have, as Olga said and Anna too, well, as you know, we're here today. So we're here today is an expression used to introduce the objective. Okay, what would follow at number 2? Okay, that's good, Gunther. Okay, but right before that was number 4, come up with solutions. And come up with means to create or to invent some solutions. And then that was followed by 6. Did everyone receive a copy of the agenda? Okay, this is an important question to ask during the meeting to make sure everybody has an agenda. Okay, after number 6, okay, we have number 10 as you can see, and then 8. There are 3 items to discuss. That's good, Oksana. Okay, and this is where we're going to introduce the items on the agenda. Okay, all right, then we have and finally, so then would follow number 1. And can anybody say what was at the end? Okay, we have as you can see, okay, but there's one expression which we have at the very end, at the end of the beginning of the meeting. Okay, this is an expression. Right, that's very good, Anna. It's number 9. I'd like to hand over to. So hand over to is when you want to give the floor to somebody else. So that means that you want to allow another person, a participant, to speak in the meeting. Okay, so we can say, I'd like to hand over to Emmanuel, for example. Okay, so let's look at the beginning of the meeting now, and we can look at some of these expressions. Okay, everyone, let's get started. Sylvia sends her apologies. She's tied up with the American visitors working on the new branding project. She'll join us a bit later. Okay, tied up with means busy. Well, as you know, we're here today to look at ways of streamlining operations as a result of recent negative feedback and to come up with some cost-cutting solutions. Okay? If you can remember, feedback is the opinions, ideas that other people have. Did everyone receive a copy of the agenda? Good. Well, as you can see, there are 3 items to discuss. The recent operational problems that we've been having, the various outsourcing options that are on offer, and finally, the cost-cutting solutions that head office have sent us. Would anyone like to add anything to the agenda? I'm sorry, Mike, but I don't think that really comes under the scope of today's meeting. We'll come back to that at a later date if you don't mind. Okay, scope means the topic or the theme of the meeting. Okay, at this point, I'd like to hand over to Emmanuel, who's going to kick off with a review of the recent operational issues that clients have complained about and the solution that he's come up with. Emmanuel? Okay, so kick off means to start. And here we see the expression to hand over to. Okay, that means we're going to give the floor to Emmanuel. Okay, so that is the beginning of a meeting. Okay, so there are a lot of expressions that you can see, and these are expressions that are used by the chairperson. Okay, now we're going to look at some opinions related to an agenda. So how often have you seen an agenda left totally aside? The meeting starts off well, but becomes embroiled in a particular topic. It could be the first item on the agenda and ends when time runs out. Okay, embroiled means deeply involved in. So have you ever been in this situation? Have you ever been in a situation where a meeting doesn't follow the agenda? You can just write this in the chat box, the yes or no. Right, Gunther wrote yes. Okay. Right. Okay. So maybe some of you have been in a meeting that doesn't follow along with the agenda. Okay. And this could be a common problem. So what can be done is that the chairperson needs to do a few things. These are some strategies. He or she needs to assess the importance of each item, allot time to each topic. If one issue begins to dominate, the chairman takes control. Okay? He or she also needs to suggest a further meeting to discuss the issue at a later date. Okay? Or the participants can also discuss after the meeting. And he may need to call for a decision and move on to the next topic. But it's important that the chairperson always stays alert and make sure that the issues have been given adequate and impartial hearing. Okay, that means that each issue on the agenda needs to be given fair and equal importance. Okay, so this is the role of a chairperson. Has anyone been a chairperson in a meeting? Okay, you can just write yes or no. Is it yes, Gunther? Okay. And a no, right? Okay. Oksana, yes. Okay, so for some of you, I see many of you. Yes, Sergey also, Sergey. I see many of you have been a chairperson, so you know the problems that a chairperson encounters. Okay, and it's always very important that you keep the meeting on track. Okay, the other thing that a chairperson needs to do is to follow the agenda. And the agenda is like the chair's friend. Okay. Now, a meeting agenda is a roadmap for the meeting. It lets participants know where they're headed so they don't get off track. Most importantly, the meeting agenda gives a sense of purpose and direction to the meeting. Okay? So this is what an agenda does. It helps to organize the meeting and keep the meeting on track. Okay? So what should agendas include? Okay, can you just write down in the chat box, what are some things that you think an agenda should include? Okay, that's good. Anna, items to discuss. Olga gives the heading of the meeting. Also the objectives, that's right, Olga. And Sergey, the purposes. And Gunta is, says the topics, the items of the meeting, right? And Oksana, that's very good. This is another important thing is time, the participants, and questions, right? Okay, also the problems, right, Anna? Okay, so you have all come up with great ideas, Sergey, also the expectations, the goals, or the aims of the meeting. That's correct. So what should an agenda include? The meeting start time, the meeting end time, the location, topic headings. It can also include some topic details for each of the headings. The time each topic is expected to last, right? So Sergey also included that some breaks, right? It's important to include time, to allot time for everything, including breaks. To indicate which meeting participants are expected to be the main topic participants. Okay. Okay, so many of your ideas that you wrote down are included here. That's what an agenda should include. And there are various types of agendas. Okay, some of these we saw last week. Here we have a first type of agenda, which is like an agenda on a Post-it note, very informal. You can see some headings and some ideas. And you can see AOB. And AOB we talked about last week. Can anybody remember what does an AOB mean? What does AOB mean? We usually see this in a meeting. AOB. AOB you can find often on the agenda, and it can also be said by the chairperson at the end of a meeting. Okay, Sergey wrote out of business. Okay, that's a good try, but it actually means, it's very similar, but any other business. AOB is any other business. Okay, I'll just write that for you here in the chat box. Any other business. Okay, that means that at the end of a meeting, you might have any other business or any other questions or things to discuss, and that's what it means. Okay, so the first agenda is an informal. The second one is a much more formal agenda. You can see that they indicate the room, the date, and the time. Okay, you also can see 6 issues that are going to be discussed in the meeting. Okay. The third one is also a formal agenda. You can see the objectives to reduce the cost in the HR department. They clearly state the date, place, and the participants. And finally, we see the last agenda, which is a PowerPoint summary with just the headings listed. Okay, which agenda or agendas do you think are the best ones? The first, second, third, or fourth. Which one or ones do you think are the best agendas? Okay, Oksana stated number 3. 2 and 3. Right, Gunther. Okay. Yes, the second and the third agendas are the best. They are more formal, but they include much more information. The time, the place, the issues, and also the participants in number 3. So the best agendas would be formal agendas, and they would look similar to number 2 and 3. Okay. Now, what's also very important in a meeting is the follow-up. Follow-up is very important, and this comes after a meeting. Okay? It's to make sure that everything is done that has been discussed at the meeting. So let's take a look at some things, and you can tell me if it's during or after the meeting. Do you think these are things that happen during or after a meeting? Okay? Start on time. You can just write down during or after. Okay, Oksana, right, during, yes. So to start on time, it's important, and that's in the beginning of a meeting. Okay, what about taking the minutes? To take the minutes. Okay, Gunther said after the meeting. And Olga, I think, said during the meeting. Okay, well, that's a good point, because taking the minutes can actually happen during and after the meeting. If it is the secretary, then it will be happening during the meeting. But if it is a participant, then it will usually happen after the meeting. So taking the minutes can really happen both during and after a meeting. Okay, scheduling the next meeting. Right, okay. Gunter says after the meeting. Okay, that's probably going to happen at the end of the meeting. Right, so it could be during or after. Toward the end of the meeting or right after, you'll schedule the next one. Okay, follow-up email. Okay, after, yes. Follow-up email is after. Follow-up call would also continue with the idea of after. And outline actions to be taken would be out after, right? Okay, so just to remind you that you'll be getting all of the answers to the questions and the vocabulary in PDF format in the next days, okay? Okay, so every time you see follow-up means after a meeting. It could be a follow-up email or it could be a follow-up call, okay? So here you're going to see a follow-up email. This is a follow-up email after a meeting. And if you just take a minute to read this email, I'd like you to read the email and then try to answer this question. What decision was made in the last meeting? Okay, so what decision was made in the last meeting? Okay, that's good, Oksana, to replace Emma. Okay, and also Perry said that. Okay, that's very good. So the decision that was made was to replace the operational manager, Emma. Okay, in this email, there is also a suggestion for what will be discussed in the next meeting. So what will be discussed in the next meeting? What will be discussed in the next meeting? Okay, right, Perry, staff and benefit cuts. That's good. Okay, and Anna, who will take her place? Right, okay, that's also good, Anna. And that they will also be discussing who will take her place, but they will look at the staff and benefit cuts as well. Okay, so all of those answers are correct, okay? So as you can see, this is a follow-up email. What does follow-up email mean? It means an email discussing what was decided in the last meeting, so in this case, replacing Emma, and it also talks about what is going to be discussed in the next meeting. Okay, so it really has two functions. Okay, now we can also have a follow-up memo. So as you can see here, we have a follow-up memo to the meeting with the date, the participants, and with all of the tasks that are allocated to the participants. So it outlines the role of each of the participants for their action points, which they need to do after the meeting. Okay, so if we take a look, we can see Jeremy Banks. He is to contact departmental managers regarding the details of the staff cuts and Emma's removal. Imogen Gold, his task is to arrange a meeting for management and put forward possible replacements. Emmanuel, his action point is to present the financial ramifications of cuts. And Sylvia, her action point is to send more detailed outline of proposals. Okay, so this is also another way to do a follow-up. You can also have a follow-up memo listing all the action points that are allocated to each of the members. Okay, so when we do reporting, when we report what each person has to do, we can use some verbs. Okay, here is the subject. These are the names of the people. And then we have some verbs. Agreed, arranged, decided, managed, offered, promised, remembered, forgot, and hoped and planned. Okay? And then we finally have the end of the expression. Okay, you can see different endings. Okay, so if you look carefully, there is a preposition missing after the verb. Okay, there's one preposition that's missing in all of those phrases that comes after the verb that is used to connect and construct the sentence. So can you write down in the chat box, what is the preposition that is missing? It would come after the verb and it would be used to connect with the end part of the phrase. Okay, for example, if we take I agreed, hold the meeting next Thursday. What is the preposition that needs to come after agreed? Okay, well, if we look at the sentences carefully, after the verb, you need to use a preposition to connect it. Okay, Olga made a good point. The chairman needs S at the end. Okay. Right, okay, that could also be it. But we need a preposition, actually, after the verb. Okay, and the preposition that we need is to. Okay, so for example, we can say, I agreed to hold the meeting next Thursday. Okay, or the chairman promised to circulate the memo. Okay, so just take a few seconds to look at the different possibilities of sentences that can be created. Okay, so let's look now at some sentences, and that can help you to understand how we can report action points. So Jeremy agreed to contact departmental managers. Agreed to. Okay. Sylvia arranged to hold the meeting next Thursday and to ensure she'd attend this time. Okay. The meeting decided to replace the operations manager. So they decided to replace. Emmanuel planned to outline the financial aspects of the cuts. So planned to outline. My assistant promised to circulate the memo. To circulate the memo. Okay, to circulate is to distribute or to give out. And I intend to send you a PDF with useful language. This is another one that I created. So I intend to send you. Okay, so you can see the different verbs that we used: agreed, arranged, decided, planned, promised, intend. And after this follows the preposition to with a new verb. And we can use this format in order to give out the action points. Okay, in order to give out the action points and tell what everybody has to do. Okay? Okay. Okay, now we're going to look at minutes. Okay, what does it mean, the minutes of a meeting? Can you just write down one or two words that could explain minutes of a meeting? Okay, Gunther said the protocol. Lost time or discussion. From Oksana, and Olga said the essence or the main points of the meeting. Okay, right, okay. Well, the minutes is actually the written record of what was discussed at the meeting. Okay, so the minutes is going to be the written record of what was discussed. It's going to include the participants, the time, the decisions that were made, and also any action plans or follow-up. Okay, has anyone taken minutes at a meeting? You can just write down that yes or no. Has anyone ever taken the minutes of a meeting? Okay, Perry answered yes. Going to Oksana. Okay, so some of you have taken minutes of a meeting, so you are familiar with it. Okay, so let's look here about some opinions, what people think minutes of a meeting are. If you think that distributing minutes with assigned action items and due dates will make your meetings effective, think again. Okay, this is one opinion. My experience is that many meeting participants fail to look at the minutes until the day of the next meeting. This assumes that the meeting recorder distributed the minutes before the day of the next meeting. Okay, so the minutes should be distributed right after the meeting within 48 hours, not at the last minute. Okay, and to make meeting follow-up work, you need to develop a culture of accountability that makes it not okay to show up at the next meeting with action items incomplete. Barring a culture change, the meeting leader needs to follow up with participants regularly between meetings to ensure action items are underway. Okay, so minutes are an essential part of a meeting. They will include the information of the meeting, the decisions, the action points, and it's also important that the meeting leader or the facilitator make sure that the action points are going to be carried out. Okay, so minutes are very important. Okay, here we can see a minute of a clock, okay, but the minutes of a meeting are the written expressions, the written account of what happened. Okay, it's a written record of the main events at a meeting. Okay, what do minutes include? The names of participants, the purpose of the meeting, the date, time, and place, a brief summary of reports, decision on any action items, and care should be taken in the wording of the agreed upon decision. Okay, so you should check with the team to make sure that you use correct wording. Additional decisions and assignments, they should include the name of the person, assigned an item needing follow-up, it's the completion date, and the expected reporting date. The time the meeting is concluded, and the date of the next meeting if known. Okay, so it's quite formal, and it's always a written record of what happened. Okay, there are some do's and don'ts about minutes of a meeting. So let's look at them, and you can just write in the chat box if you think it is a do, something that should be done, or a don't. Okay, so write the minutes soon after the meeting, preferably within 48 hours. That way, those who attended can be reminded of action items, and those who did not attend will promptly know what happened. Okay, right. Gunther and Olga, that is correct, and Perry do. Right, so the minutes of the meeting should always be written soon after the meeting. Okay, number 2, skip writing minutes just because everyone attended the meeting and knows what happened. Meeting notes serve as a record of the meeting long after people forgot what happened. Okay, do you think that's a do or a don't? Okay, right, Gunther, don't. That's correct. So you don't want to skip writing the minutes. Okay, it's always necessary to have minutes of the meeting. Okay, number 3, describe all the he said, she said details unless those details are very important. Record topics discussed, decisions made, and action items. Okay, so what do you think? Okay, well, okay, we have different answers. Gunther said do and Perry said don't. Okay, well, if we look at it carefully, it said describe all of the he said, she said details. Okay, so this is actually a don't. Okay, we don't need to describe every single detail, what every single person said exactly, he said and she said. Okay, only the important details. Okay, only the details that are very important, critical about the issues and ideas in the meetings, not every single thing. Okay, so the actual number 3 would be don't. Okay, number 4, include any information that will embarrass anyone. For example, Terry left the room in tears. Okay, so is that a do or a don't? Okay, good. Olga, Gunther, right, and Oksana, don't. Of course, yes, it's not a good idea to include information that would embarrass anyone. We can keep that out of the minutes. Okay, use positive language. Rather than describing the discussion as heated or angry, use passionate, lively, or energetic. Okay, because all of these have the same meaning as the negative words. So positive language. Okay, right, Oksana and Gunther and Perry, that's a do. Right. It's always important to use a positive language in your minutes. Okay, and finally, have a new year filled with productive meetings captured efficiently in crisp, clear meeting notes. Okay, so I think if we look at that, that would be a do. Okay, so as the new year is approaching, I can hope, and I will hope that you have a new year filled with a lot of productive meetings, okay, with effective meeting strategies and also with productive minutes and follow-up. Okay, so thank you for your participation today. And are there any other questions, any other business or any questions about the webinar or about the meetings? Okay, any questions? Okay, no questions, Anna? Okay. Well, if you would like any more information about today's webinar, okay, you can go to the website, www.humanenglish.com. You can find information about our past webinars, today's webinar, as well as our future webinars. Our next webinar will be negotiating, and that will be tomorrow. So you can find all information about our webinars on the site, and you can also find information about our live online business classes. Okay, if you have any questions, you can write us an email at support@humanenglish.com, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, remember you will be getting a PDF file with the answers to today's questions and with some of the slides and information and vocabulary from today's webinar meeting. Okay. So thank you again, everybody, for participating. Sorry again for any audio problems that we may have had in the beginning of the webinar, but I think that after some minutes, it was the second part was clear. Okay, thank you, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you in the next webinar. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.
These specialisation courses are both 50-hour, 10 units courses. They can be studied in the trainee's own time at their own pace. There's two of them. One of them is Business English and the other one is Younger Learners. They both allow trainees to gain extra experience and knowledge regarding those particular target areas so they can enhance employability and make CVs or resumes more desirable in the eyes of employers. Young Learners and Business English is the most common type of English teaching available. So having an extra qualification for one of these two or both would certainly be beneficial.